This video is sponsored by Zenjir. So if you've been following the channel for any amount of time now, you know that we recently moved into this new space and I've been slowly building it out to be a YouTube studio. The thing is, I consume just as much power as a two-person household, which is honestly quite extreme because I live here alone and I didn't realize that my power consumption was that high. Now, I live in a city center. I do have a garden. It's not very big, it's not very pretty. I don't really use the garden. And I rent this apartment, right? I have somebody living above me, so I don't have access to the roof. But I'd still like to invest in a clean energy solution to keep my electricity costs a little bit lower and maybe also make myself a little bit more self-sufficient in case of a power outage. Now, generally, it's considered quite difficult to invest in solar-powered solutions when you rent a place. But these days, there's more and more solutions which are plug and play, which makes installing solar-powered solutions or home battery systems really quite easy. So I was really curious to see if I could build an improvised solar setup in my garden and save a little bit on my electricity bill. And Zendure reached out a little while back and offered to send me the SolarFlow 2400 AC, which is a plug and play battery solution that also allows you to store solar power on that battery and discharge it at night. So I responded to them and told them about my little plan to build a solar setup in my garden and asked if they wanted to send over the solar panels as well. And to my surprise, they sent me 4 really large 450 watt solar panels, I believe, bifacial. So I built a little solar setup in my garden and I'm taking you along in my project of becoming net neutral. So I'm under no illusion here. I know that this setup is very improvised and it's not the most ideal situation to be in, right? I just wanted to use what I had and see how far we could get. The first package I received was the top unit of the SolarFlow 2400 AC, which is basically the brains of the entire system. Came packaged really nicely and I was super impressed by the build quality of this thing. It's made completely out of metallic parts and it feels extremely rugged. Now, this top component primarily just connects to the house and connects to the battery system, which is the next package we're unboxing over here. These battery modules have a plug at the top and a plug at the bottom over here, and that means you can also stack these to increase the capacity from 2.88 kilowatt hours all the way up to 17 kilowatt hours. And this is of course dependent on what kind of household you have. And so we just dropped that main brains of the system that we unboxed earlier onto the battery module, and then that way we can connect it to the wall with the power plug that's included. So it does actually have an IP65 rating, which means you can leave these things outside, and it has some rubber covers over here. So this entire thing has a really nice heavy duty build quality. Everything is made out of metal, and of course with the IP rating you could leave these outside, but they're quite expensive, so I would rather put them inside of my home instead of outside where people can, easily steal them. This AC outlet actually provides 2400 watts of output. Now, of course, that power plug is really nice for emergency situations because this system does shut down if there's a power outage due to something we call anti-islanding. And that's quite essential, otherwise a system like this just wouldn't be legal here in the Netherlands. It prevents, electricians who are working on the power grid during an outage from getting electrocuted by your household. Zendure has recently also released a newer model which accepts solar power directly, which is really neat, and I highly recommend you check that one out as well. Now, the nice thing about this battery solution is its plug and play nature. So we have a single power cord here, and this of course provides power to the battery, but once the battery is discharging, it discharges via this power plug as well. So this is actually what's powering the entire house. On the side here we have this Wi-Fi antenna, which means we can connect to the device via our phone and also connect it to a P1 smart meter, for example, and tell it what to do in certain situations. Now, currently here in the Netherlands, we can sell our excess solar production back onto the net and then save a little bit on our electricity bill. But in 2027, there's going to be some changes to that, and that's when a battery solution like this makes a lot of sense. So it also comes with this incredibly neatly designed app, and you can actually choose the mode over here. So it has this AI mode called Zenki, and what I believe it does is it actually, accounts for weather forecasts and that kind of stuff, and how much you're paying for your electricity right now to best determine when to charge the battery and when to discharge it. Or you could put a smart meter in place and customize the whole situation yourself. So the benefit of a P1 smart meter is that it knows exactly how much solar power is coming into the network and when to charge the battery and when to discharge the battery. And especially if you're on a dynamic electricity plan, this kind of system becomes a lot more capable because it charges the battery when the electricity is cheap and uses energy later on when the prices are higher. Zendure also supports over 840 local energy providers across Europe, so these smart features are designed to work with a wide range of regions. Now, the nice thing about Zendure is that they have this entire ecosystem, so they have the battery systems, the solar panels, the inverters, and of course also the P1 smart meter that I have here. And the P1 smart meter is really awesome because it just connects to the P1 port on your meter box, and then that way you can see detailed specs on how much you're consuming and on which phase. I actually highly recommend getting a P1 smart meter if you have a system like this because it just makes it a lot more efficient, right? So if there's 300 watts of solar power coming in, it will charge the battery at 300 watts, if nothing else is consuming power, of course. So as I mentioned earlier, Zenjir also sent over the solar panels. These are some 450 watt bifacial ones, and they're quite large. I wasn't expecting these things to be so big. So I need to make some kind of system in my garden where you can still walk underneath them. 25mm tubing quite a lot in my projects these days, just because it's so easy to get from the hardware store here in the Netherlands. I'd love to go for aluminium extrusions in every single project, but those usually take quite a while to actually arrive because they have to be shipped from Poland. Now I'm not going to show too much of my backyard situation over here just because I don't want any unexpected visitors to come along, but basically there's a building right next door which blocks most of the sun, and of course it's not the most ideal situation. But I do want to angle the panels a little bit so that they collect as much sunlight as possible, and Zenjir also sent over these angled connectors which you usually just drill into the wall and connect that way. I put some of these aluminium plates at the bottom and then connected them to the tubing in that way. They have rubber pads on there so they don't slip or anything like that. Now initially I wasn't really going to use these angled connectors, but it seems so they sent them over. I wanted to integrate them. And this means that during the winter months the sun is so low that some of the panels are blocking the panels behind it, which is kind of a shame of course, but I also have some future plans where I'd really like to build a tiny house on a nice piece of land. And I thought like, okay, if I accept the sponsorship with the solar panels, then I have that situation sorted already. The nice thing about this entire system is that the SolarFlow 2400 AC doesn't necessarily need to be near the solar panels. It just needs to be connected to the same network as the solar panels. So we can leave this thing indoors, and I wanted to make a special spot for it so that it seems very nicely integrated. A little while ago we built the EDC rack, which is basically a glorified coat hanger, and I wanted to upgrade the system with an extra rack at the top which could hold the SolarFlow 2400 AC. So I took the unit to the 3D scanning station in order to get an accurate representation of what it would look like in the rack system, imported it into the CAD, and then I started designing this new rack. Now I'm not entirely sure if this was the best method to go about it because the rack system was good as it was, and by upgrading it with these components I might actually ruin the entire theme of it. But I went for the same philosophy as the previous model, where if we enclose the system with tubing all around it, it would look less messy than if it was just sitting on top of there. So if you're enjoying the video so far, then consider leaving a like, leaving a comment, or subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. And also check out the Patreon page. I upload all of the designs that I make and all of the 3D scans that I make, so you can access those for yourself and adjust it if you want to. So as I put together the rack system here, I wanted to go over some quick math to see how much this solar panel array might save me over the year and how much it will produce realistically. In general, I haven't tested it yet, right? I want to do an updated video in a couple of months, take you along in the process of how it's doing, how much I've actually saved, and if it's performing okay, any kind of upgrades that I've done to it. For now though, this is going to be a rough estimate. So I've got four 450 watt bifacial solar panels in the garden. So that's about 1.8 kilowatts peak, connected to 2.88 kilowatt hours of battery inside of the house. I use roughly 12 kilowatt hours per day in a bad day, or a good day, essentially when I'm producing a lot of content or I'm filming a lot or I have the lights running. And in the Netherlands, these panels produce about 4 to 5 kilowatt hours per day on average. So realistically, this setup covers roughly a third of my electricity use over the year. In the summer, on a good sunny day, it can produce around 8 to 11 kilowatts, which is close to covering all of my electricity usage. In the winter, it's more like 1 to 2, so that's not nearly enough to cover my entire electricity bill. And the battery doesn't increase how much energy I generate, it just stores it so that we can actually use it later on. And that does actually improve the performance quite a lot in the calculations I did. This is also where Zenjir's Zenki 2.0 smart management solution comes into play. It automatically optimizes when the battery charges and discharges based on your usage and available solar power. So even when solar production is very low, like in the winter, this system still runs really efficiently. As for the rack system here, I put a cable gutter in place so that the SolarFlow 2400 AC could easily access this power plug. In general, I'm really pleased with the system. I would love to add an extra couple solar panels to it to try and become completely net neutral in this garden of mine. Not sure if that's going to be possible, but it'll be an exciting project to continue with and upgrade as we go along with the studio build. So I hope you enjoyed this video, I hope it was interesting, and stay tuned for an updated video to see how much the system actually produces and how much it's actually saving me.